I just kind of cast it as, oh, he's losing his marbles. Had I known, I think I would have handled it better. I think I would have been a much more patient person. I think my father would have felt way less alone.
When Marvel Studios dropped the bombshell that Ryan Reynolds was out, the shockwaves hit harder than an Avengers Endgame twist. This wasn't just a loss for superhero fans. It rattled the entire entertainment industry. In a universe where A-list stars are treated like royalty, watching someone of Ryan's stature get axed was almost unthinkable. But his abrupt exit wasn't just a random decision. It came right after some damning receipts surfaced, courtesy of none other than filmmaker Justin Baldoni. And the twist? This wasn't just about Ryan. It tied directly into a messy feud involving his wife, Blake Lively. Now, here's the million-dollar question. How did one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, who was set to lead major Marvel blockbusters, suddenly find himself on the chopping block? The rumor mill had already been churning about growing tensions between Ryan and Marvel execs, but the whispers turned into full-on sirens after a dramatic fallout surrounding a high-profile film. That film? A much-anticipated adaptation directed and controversially co-written by Baldoni. At first, the drama seemed like a behind-the-scenes creative clash between Justin and Blake. Alleged power moves, artistic differences, Hollywood's usual cocktail of chaos. But Marvel's announcement flipped the script entirely. It wasn't just about a feud between a director and an actress anymore. Ryan, who had largely been seen as an outsider in this dispute, suddenly found himself at the center of it all. His involvement, previously downplayed, was now being framed as the very reason his Marvel future was dead on arrival. So how did this all start? To understand the full extent of this Hollywood shakeup, we need to rewind. Justin Baldoni built his reputation on crafting deeply emotional films that resonated with audiences. His talent for turning raw human stories into cinematic gold made him a fan favorite. So when he took on the challenge of adapting a beloved novel, expectations were sky high. Fans couldn't wait to see how he'd bring the source material to life. But no one could have predicted that this very project would set the stage for one of the most shocking Hollywood fallouts in years. Blake Lively, always the picture of charm in interviews and a vision of grace on the red carpet, was set to shine in a leading role. On paper, it was a dream collaboration. Her star power and Justin Baldoni's reputation for emotional storytelling seemed like the perfect match. Fans were hyped, especially since early promotional clips painted the project as an uplifting, heartwarming spectacle. But behind the scenes, the cracks formed almost immediately. Insiders whispered that Blake was growing frustrated, and it wasn't hard to see why. Justin wasn't just calling the shots as director. He was deep in the scriptwriting process and set to play a major on-screen role. Talk about wearing too many hats. Hollywood is no stranger to creative differences, but the tension on this set was off the charts.
I'm honored, and I'm also more honored that because, what we're talking about is so important and so meaningful that we're able to have this much anticipation and so many people want to go see it and are talking about it. That's what I'm grateful for.
And you had a key part in bringing it to the big screen. How did this all come to be?
Well, in 2019, I read the book. I was sent the book by my book agent and friend at the time, and I was looking for films that could inspire, that were commercially viable, but also could really reach in and touch somebody's heart.
Whispers turned into full-blown rumors. Blake allegedly felt sidelined, claiming Justin was hogging the spotlight and steering the project in a way that minimized her contributions. At first, it seemed like standard on-set friction, nothing a few tough conversations couldn't fix. But then, the drama hit a whole new level. Out of nowhere, Blake accused Justin of actively working against her, suggesting he had been feeding the press a very specific narrative, one that painted her as difficult, demanding, and hard to work with. And let's be real, Hollywood has a long, ugly history of male directors undermining female stars through strategic leaks. The industry was inclined to believe her. For a moment, it seemed like Justin was done for. Social media erupted, headlines labeled him overbearing, and the public rallied around Blake, seeing her as another female star battling the all-too-common trope of being problematic just for asserting herself. But then, boom, Justin's camp dropped the receipts. Text messages surfaced, and suddenly, the whole narrative took a sharp, unexpected turn. The leaked messages flipped the entire narrative on its head. Contrary to Blake's claims of being sidelined and manipulated, the texts painted a completely different picture. One where she wasn't just making demands, but wielding some serious influence behind the scenes. And the kicker? She wasn't shy about flexing her husband's formidable network. She even referred to her powerful industry friends, Ryan Reynolds included, as dragons, a not-so-subtle nod to the firepower she could summon if things didn't go her way. The receipts showed Blake actively pushing for script rewrites, dictating marketing strategies, and even attempting to control how the project was framed to the public. Suddenly, her claims of feeling undermined looked a lot less convincing. Instead, it seemed she was the one pulling the strings, ensuring the film aligned with her own vision. And while the scandal exploded around her, Ryan's role remained a mystery. Was he complicit, or was his name being thrown around without his knowledge? For a while, no one could say for sure, especially since Ryan had stayed completely silent on the matter. But then, even more material surfaced, and suddenly, Ryan wasn't just an innocent bystander. The new leaks directly implicated him in the behind-the-scenes power plays, showing that he wasn't just aware of the drama, he was actively helping shape the narrative in Blake's favor. His usual brand, built on charm, humor, and an unshakable good guy image, took a serious hit as the details emerged. These weren't just casual mentions. The messages outlined Ryan's strategic involvement. There were references to private calls with Hollywood power players, tactical suggestions on how to leak damaging stories about Justin, and even proposed PR angles that would recast Blake as a misunderstood victim.
I mean, I internalized that as opportunity. We had such a responsibility to this audience to deliver something and to have the opportunity to deliver something for a passionate group of people.
Yes.
As someone who is so deeply passionate myself, I was so excited about that. I would so much rather have that than people who are indifferent.
The Golden Boy comedian, beloved for his quick wit and self-deprecating humor, was now being framed as a behind-the-scenes co-conspirator. At first, the chaos seemed centered on the fiery clash between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, with Ryan Reynolds playing little more than a supporting role in the background. But that illusion shattered when Justin dropped a bombshell. He had even more receipts. Not just vague accusations or secondhand accounts, but time-stamped communications and digital proof so airtight, no one could brush them off as rumors or tabloid spin. According to early leaks, these messages directly tied Ryan to a calculated strategy, one that wasn't just about defending Blake, but about flipping the entire narrative in her favor. The alleged plan? To push the idea that Blake was a wronged actress struggling against a dismissive, unsympathetic director, and to make that story stick, Justin had to be cast as the villain. As soon as whispers of this new evidence hit Hollywood, Marvel executives panicked. Ryan wasn't just any actor. He was a pillar of Marvel's future projects. His charm, wit, and comedic timing had become an inseparable part of the franchise's DNA. But now, with mounting evidence suggesting he wasn't just a bystander but an active player in a behind-the-scenes smear campaign, things got messy. The idea that he had been directly involved in trying to manipulate public perception and undermine a respected director wasn't something Marvel could ignore. Hollywood has seen its fair share of messy controversies, but this one had real stakes. Marvel thrives on maintaining clean, drama-free relationships with its lead actors. Any whiff of scandal, especially one involving deception and sabotage, could threaten its carefully built empire. If Marvel backed Ryan despite clear proof of underhanded behavior, the fallout could be catastrophic. Fans, cast members, and even major collaborators might start turning their backs. Then came the moment that changed everything. Marvel's top executives gathered for an emergency meeting, ready to examine the bombshell evidence Justin had just released. And what they saw? It was enough to shake the very foundation of the MCU. The contents of the leaked messages weren't made public immediately, but insiders described them as devastating. This wasn't just circumstantial evidence. It was direct proof that Ryan Reynolds had been actively working with Blake Lively to control media narratives, shape public perception, and systematically undermine Justin Baldoni. And if that wasn't messy enough, the leaks suggested the scandal stretched far beyond this one film.
I was looking for movies that could be commercial and speak to the human experience. And
Were you reading romance novels?
And I had never read a romance novel.
Never?
And she said, just trust me, read it. So I read it, and by the end of the book, I couldn't even read the text on the page because I was crying so much. My wife was in bed next to me, and she's, I got snot coming out of my nose.
Rumors swirled that these texts hinted at a broader pattern, suggesting Ryan and Blake had a history of using their industry connections to apply pressure, manipulate opportunities, and strategically position themselves in Hollywood. It wasn't just about creative disputes anymore. This was a power play exposed in real time. And for Marvel, that was the breaking point. In a move no one saw coming, Marvel cut ties with Ryan Reynolds. Just like that, the studio wiped its hands of one of its biggest stars, officially ending a partnership that had been set to generate hundreds of millions at the box office. When the official statement dropped, it was shockingly blunt. Marvel cited a review of newly disclosed information and concluded that Ryan's continued involvement was no longer tenable. For longtime fans, this was unheard of. Marvel is known for handling PR nightmares with carefully worded corporate fluff. But this was different. The tone was serious, final, and completely devoid of the usual upbeat spin. It wasn't just a break, it was a full-on exile. Social media exploded with shock, disbelief, and endless speculation. How could one of the most beloved Hollywood figures, a man whose brand was built on humor, charm, and an untouchable reputation, end up being dropped by the very studio that once championed him? As the internet demanded answers, Justin Baldoni stayed cool. There was no smug victory lap, no petty jabs at Ryan or Blake. Instead, he did something even more calculated. He released even more receipts. Detailed logs that cemented the timeline of events, making it crystal clear that his goal had never been to destroy careers, but to defend his professional integrity and protect his production team. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. This time, leaving Ryan and Blake with nowhere to hide. Justin Baldoni didn't mince words. The messages were undeniable proof that Ryan and Blake had actively worked to undermine him, not just as a director, but as a creative force in Hollywood. His stance hadn't wavered from the start. Disagreements should be handled through direct professional conversations, not through backdoor smear campaigns and media manipulation. And now, he had the receipts to prove it. With Ryan's silence growing louder by the day, the spotlight shifted squarely onto Blake. The situation took an even wilder turn when her own attorney abruptly cut ties with her, citing irreconcilable differences regarding her version of events. That set the internet ablaze. Was Blake the true mastermind behind the drama? Had she pressured Ryan into stepping in, or were they both equally responsible for the elaborate behind-the-scenes power play? Speculation about their marriage exploded, with many wondering if their seemingly perfect Hollywood partnership was less about love and more about carefully curated image control. Whether or not the rumors were true, one thing was clear. This was never just about Blake wanting creative influence. The leaked messages revealed a calculated effort to paint Justin as an incapable, difficult director, a portrayal that completely fell apart once the unfiltered text logs went public. And Ryan, the king of social media comebacks? He suddenly had nothing to say. In the past, whenever controversy surfaced, even minor ones, Ryan would address it with his signature wit, often turning the narrative in his favor with a single, well-placed joke. But this time, radio silence. Instead of addressing the firestorm, his social media pages carried on like nothing happened. He posted bland promotional content, steering far away from anything related to Marvel, the film, or Justin. But that strategy wasn't fooling anyone. Fans weren't used to seeing Ryan dodge an issue this big, and the fact that he was avoiding it altogether only made the situation look worse. With Marvel's official termination of Ryan Reynolds now public knowledge, his usual lighthearted approach to controversy wasn't just ineffective, it was outright impossible. Any attempt to joke his way out of the scandal would have likely backfired spectacularly. According to insiders, Ryan was in full-blown crisis mode, scrambling to salvage a public persona that had taken its biggest hit yet. But this wasn't just about Ryan anymore. Marvel's shockingly decisive move sent a ripple effect through the entire industry. Hollywood studios are always watching each other, especially when it comes to handling contract disputes with A-listers, and for a juggernaut like Marvel to cut ties with one of its biggest stars. That sent a clear message. The evidence against Ryan wasn't just compelling, it was serious enough that not even his box office power could outweigh the risk to the brand. This was a wake-up call for Hollywood's elite. Star power alone wasn't enough to shield someone from consequences, especially when the allegations directly threatened the reputation of a billion-dollar franchise. If Ryan could be dropped despite his massive fan base and profitability, then no actor was untouchable. As the dust settled, Hollywood split into two camps. Some insiders blasted Marvel's move as extreme, arguing that the scandal could have been managed with PR spin, damage control, and a carefully crafted public apology. Was this really worth losing a top-tier box office draw? Couldn't the partnership have been saved? But others saw it as a long-overdue reckoning. If Ryan had indeed orchestrated a behind-the-scenes smear campaign against a respected director, then this wasn't just a minor Hollywood feud, it was a violation of basic industry ethics. And behind closed doors? Some in the business quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Powerful Hollywood couples had been playing the game for too long, manipulating narratives and pulling strings without consequences. Now, Marvel's decision was proof that even the biggest names could be held accountable. The fallout from Marvel's bold decision wasn't just about Ryan. It signaled something bigger. If the most powerful studio in pop culture was willing to hold him accountable, it raised the question, could this set a new precedent? Some argued that Marvel's move could force a shift in Hollywood, discouraging the kind of backroom power plays that had long shaped high-profile productions. If even A-list stars weren't immune to consequences, could this be the beginning of a more transparent industry? For Justin Baldoni, the moment was vindicating. He had maintained from the start that this wasn't about punishing individuals, but about exposing the shady, behind-the-scenes maneuvers that had threatened his creative control. What had started as a private professional dispute had blown up into a full-scale Hollywood scandal. While some saw Ryan's firing as an extreme measure, others believed it was a necessary course correction. It wasn't just about protecting Justin, it was about sending a message. Crew members who had witnessed the tension firsthand quietly confirmed that minor on-set conflicts had been exaggerated, twisted into elaborate grievances, and then, almost like clockwork, leaked to gossip columns. To them, the receipts didn't just expose one incident of manipulation, but an intentional pattern of narrative control. Meanwhile, Blake Lively, once a constant presence on social media, known for posting intimate glimpses of her family life, had gone eerily silent. The sudden radio silence only fueled speculation that she and Ryan were scrambling behind the scenes, trying to contain the damage. Some insiders claimed Blake was devastated over Marvel's decision, taking it as a deeply personal betrayal. Others painted a different picture, insisting she wasn't backing down, and still maintained that Justin had twisted the truth to frame her and Ryan as the villains. But at this point, that argument was falling apart. With so much hard evidence circulating, Blake's attempts to recast herself as the victim seemed increasingly weak. The public wasn't buying the narrative shift, and Hollywood was watching closely to see what would happen next. Fans who had once rushed to defend Blake Lively were now backtracking fast. The leaked messages had been a brutal wake-up call, forcing many to reconsider what they thought they knew. What had seemed like a straightforward case of a female star being undermined had spiraled into something far more complex. And now, the broader media had locked in, dissecting every angle of the fallout. Talk shows were buzzing with debate. Could Ryan Reynolds pull off a career comeback? Or had his once unshakable comedic brand taken a hit too big to recover from? Marvel was famous for its tight-knit relationships with leading actors. Yet here they were, forced into a messy, very public breakup with one of their biggest stars. Some Hollywood insiders floated the possibility that Ryan could craft a redemption arc, something the industry loves, a disgraced star clawing their way back to the top. But others? They weren't convinced. The damage was severe, and the media firestorm refused to die down. With every headline, every leaked text, the rift between Ryan and Marvel only grew wider. Some experts believed that this wasn't just another Hollywood controversy. It was a major turning point. The industry was watching, and so were rival studios. Behind closed doors, producers and executives were in full-blown panic mode. Ryan had been attached to multiple upcoming projects, all banking on his broad appeal and box office draw. Now, those same decision-makers were rethinking everything. Was sticking with him worth the risk? If more dirt surfaced, would their own projects be dragged into the scandal? While Hollywood loves a good reinvention story, one thing was clear: a period of distancing was inevitable. Industry insiders compared Ryan's downfall to other once-beloved stars who had fallen from grace overnight. The major difference? Ryan's entire brand had been built on likability. His everyman charm, his ability to laugh at himself, his relatability, all of it had shielded him from backlash in the past. But this time, the damage wasn't just bad press. It was a full-scale Hollywood reckoning. For years, the public saw Ryan Reynolds as Hollywood's golden boy. His quick wit, self-deprecating humor, and charming persona made it almost impossible to associate him with anything malicious. But now, the leaked messages had forced fans to confront an uncomfortable truth. Behind the lighthearted jokes and likable facade, there was evidence of a calculated behind-the-scenes smear campaign. And for many, that shattered the illusion. Justin Baldoni, however, refused to let the chaos define him. Even with the industry buzzing about the scandal, he steered the conversation back to what mattered most: the film. He reminded audiences that the heart of the adaptation wasn't the controversy, but the deep emotional themes of the source material. He never positioned himself as a victim or a hero. Instead, he let the facts speak for themselves. And now, with Marvel's official dismissal of Ryan, it was clear. The receipts spoke louder than words. But with Ryan out, a major new question loomed. Who would replace him? Recasting an established Marvel character is no small feat. Fans form strong attachments, and mid-franchise cast changes don't always sit well. Marvel had been banking on Ryan for years, with some reports suggesting his involvement in long-term franchise plans. Now, everything was in jeopardy. Rewriting entire projects, scrapping films already in development, or pivoting to a new direction meant massive financial losses. Historically, Marvel had handled controversies with careful PR tactics. But this was a hard break. The fact that they didn't try to salvage the relationship, despite Ryan's box office appeal, made one thing painfully clear. This wasn't just a business decision. It was a statement. Marvel had drawn a line in the sand. And now, the entire industry was left wondering what would happen next. Once trust between an actor and a studio is broken this badly, moving forward is often more trouble than it's worth. Marvel clearly understood that, which is why they didn't hesitate to cut Ryan loose. And yet, ironically, while his career hung in limbo, Justin Baldoni's film adaptation kept moving forward, albeit under the heavy shadow of the controversy. The more fans learned about the Hollywood drama, the more curiosity surged about the film itself. Some cynics even speculated that the scandal could actually boost box office numbers. After all, nothing fuels intrigue like real-life Hollywood betrayal. But Justin? He wasn't interested in using Ryan's downfall as a marketing gimmick. For him, the real victory was that his creative vision had survived the storm. He refused to exploit the scandal or shift the film's promotional focus toward Marvel's shocking decision. Instead, he doubled down, insisting that his work be judged on its own merit, not as a footnote in Ryan Reynolds' biggest career implosion. Now, the biggest question left unanswered is how Ryan will respond. Will he issue a full-throated apology, attempting to soften the blow by claiming some texts were misinterpreted or taken out of context? Will he try to rebuild his reputation, maybe even attempt a reconciliation with Marvel down the line? Or is this break final? A scandal too big? A betrayal too public to ever be repaired? Given the magnitude of Marvel's decision, the last scenario seems most likely. The studio is notorious for handling controversies behind closed doors. The fact that they took such a clear, public stance suggests that, behind the scenes, they had reached a definitive conclusion. Keeping Ryan on board was simply not an option. Meanwhile, Justin has chosen to let the receipts speak for themselves. No gloating, no victory laps, just a quiet, unshakable resolve. The experience, as ugly as it was, proved just how powerful and dangerous Hollywood's manipulative PR machines can be. Even if Justin Baldoni never intended for things to spiral this far, his handling of the conflict set a new precedent. He proved that when faced with selective storytelling, sometimes the most powerful weapon is full transparency. In a world where narratives can be controlled, spun, and manipulated, nothing speaks louder than undeniable receipts. And that's the real lesson at the core of this scandal. Not even Hollywood's most bulletproof persona is immune to exposure. Ryan Reynolds, a man who built an empire on comedy, seemed untouchable. Loved by fans, valued by studios, trusted by executives. Yet behind the quick wit and effortless charm lay a far more complicated reality. His swift downfall from Marvel's golden boy to exiled star has forced the entire industry to rethink what it truly means to be untouchable. So, for now, this saga ends with Ryan's abrupt removal from the very franchise that once celebrated him. But don't expect the drama to stop here. New narratives will emerge. Will there be legal action, secret negotiations, a quiet settlement, or maybe, just maybe, Ryan will attempt a public mea culpa, framing this as one big misunderstanding. But no matter what comes next, one thing is certain. This chapter is closed. We live in an era where nothing stays hidden. Text messages, emails, leaked documents, they hold more weight than any PR-crafted apology ever could. And when a studio as monumental as Marvel decides that the evidence is too damning to ignore, the door doesn't just close, it slams shut. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the biggest Hollywood scandals. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.